Hello guys, how are you?
I'm Hardeep Singh. Welcome back to your own YouTube channel. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you got guesswork. Please guys participate in everyday listening and reading practice test to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Press the bell icon for the upcoming notifications. Don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams.
Part 1.
You will hear a woman talking to a man who works in a tourist information office.
First, you have some time to look at questions.
Good afternoon. Can I help you?
I hope so. My Portuguese friends are coming over to visit me next month, and I need to find a place for them to stay that is quite central, as I live in the city centre myself and want them to be close by. Can you recommend anywhere?
Yes. A few places instantly spring to mind. What about Belvedere Gardens Hotel? Despite what the name might suggest, it's right in the city centre, on Main Street, opposite Grimes Tower.
How much is it per night, please?
Quite reasonable given the location. $50, and that is inclusive of a continental breakfast.
Oh, that sounds nice. What about other meals? Do you have to pay extra for them?
Yes. Unfortunately, lunch and dinner are not included in the price. The hotel does have a very fine restaurant, though, and I would thoroughly recommend the buffet dinner there. Customers should be seated by 7:30 in the evening, when the buffet starts.
I'll keep it in mind. Is there anywhere else you can think of?
Certainly. The Belfield Grand is always a popular choice. It's located a little further out, though, on the south side of Edgware Common. Perhaps that's too far from the city centre.
Not really. It's only a few stops on the subway. Depends on the price.
Believe it or not, the Belfield is more expensive than Belvedere Gardens, $55.
Oh, that's no good.
Mind you, there is a $10 discount offered to customers who have booked online. There's also the fact that the price is inclusive of all meals, breakfast, lunch and dinner, served in the guests' lounge.
Before listening to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
I like the sound of this hotel more and more. The Belfield, then, so far. Is there anywhere else?
Well, you should also consider the Maple View.
I don't think I'm familiar with that one.
You should be. It's right in the heart of the city, next to the entrance to the pedestrian zone that runs along High Street.
Sounds lovely being so close to the shops. Tell me more.
It gets better. The price per night is only $28 on weekdays, though an additional $12 is charged on weekends and bank holidays.
Sounds like great value for money.
It is. That's why you have to book well in advance of your stay.
How soon should I book then?
Yesterday might not be soon enough.
Yikes! I'd better get cracking. Thank you so much for your help.
You're very welcome.
That is the end of Part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 2.
You will hear a tour guide talking to a group of tourists.
who are visiting a cave in Vietnam. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our visit to one of the most famous caves in Vietnam. As you know, this cave is famous for its wildlife, and one of the creatures you will observe in here is the small cave cockroach. They live mostly on the bird and bat droppings that are so plentiful in the caves. The guardrails along the trails are covered with these droppings, and this makes a feast for the cockroaches, so be careful where you put your hands. They will not harm you, but it can be a shock if you touch them. Once you're in one of the main caves, look out for the green centipedes. They will not be on the trail, but can often be seen on the wall close by. They feed on other insects and are fascinating to look at because of their colour and, of course, their many legs. Please do not try to pick one up, though. These centipedes have a very nasty poisonous bite. There are also deep red millipedes. These have a fully rounded shape, and they look like a streamlined, elongated train, with 100 or so closely packed legs extending right and left. When you get to the large, high caves, you should look right up above you for the swifts and bats. The bats in this cave are mostly a type of dwarf bat, which are common in this part of the world. They will be clustered high up against the walls, maybe 100 or 200 together. They look like shadows high on the walls of the cave. They are likely to be very quiet right now, but because there are so many of them together, you will have no difficulty identifying them. They sleep all day until they all leave the cave in a massive flock on their nightly hunt for flying insects. The swifts are the creatures you can see flying around during the day, especially if they have young ones to feed. They can navigate in the darkness here and will fly outside in ones and twos at dusk to catch small winged insects like mosquitoes. However, they tend to return before it's pitch black outside, and they do not hunt at night. The swifts make nests, usually higher up on the ceiling of the cave.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
The paths tend to run around the edges of the large caves. Mostly this is because the centre is a mound of guano, the bird and bat droppings. This is also the source of the strong smell inside the caves. You may not like this smell, but the locals know its economic value. They have harvested the products of these caves for centuries. The guano is very valuable as fertilizer, and so it's collected each year, once the young birds have grown and the swifts have abandoned their nests. The guano is not the only valuable byproduct of the wildlife here. As you travel through the caves, you will notice some bamboo structures. These very flimsy-looking sets of poles that go a full 100 metres right up to the roof are what the locals climb up to gather the swifts' nests. These are even more valuable than the guano, as they are the main ingredient in bird's nest soup. Before you begin, It's time for some safety instructions. As you probably know, this is a huge limestone cave that goes about 1 kilometre back into the hills, and in places it's 100 metres in height and 300 metres wide. There's no need to crawl around in here as you do in other caves, but it's dark inside, of course. That's why I insisted you bring a working light. Please check that it shines brightly and ensure that you stay together with others who have a good torch. In one of the larger areas of the cave, the roof is pierced, so some sunlight will get through. It is best to turn your torches off if you can see well and save your batteries. It's a good idea to put your waterproof jacket on now. The walls may be wet, but that's not the main reason for the jacket. The bats and birds do excrete, and they're above you, so just in case. And of course, your hat or hood also keeps you safe from animal droppings. It's not advisable to use the guardrails as handholds. There are lots of droppings on those rails, and don't forget the cockroaches. You absolutely must follow the marked trails. The guardrails on either side are put there so that you cannot mistake them. We take no responsibility for your safety if you go over or under the rails into other cave areas. Keep your torches shining on the path whenever you are moving, just to be sure of your footing, and don't try to go too fast. You might trip, and you will certainly miss some of the fascinating wildlife in the cave. Now, it's time to begin the tour.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You will hear 2 college students reporting to their science class about a project they have done on an Australian animal called the Tasmanian devil. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi everyone. For our assignment on a native animal, George and I chose that unusual Australian creature, the Tasmanian devil.
Yeah. Actually, they don't deserve to be called devils, though they do have some strange habits.
Anyway, as their name indicates, they're only found in the wild on the island of Tasmania. You can find them all over the island, including in the southwest rainforests and in coastal heath areas, but they're most commonly found in the forests where there's less rainfall in the eastern and northern parts of the island.
In fact, they live any place where they can get shelter during the day and food at night.
Some of you may have seen one in a zoo. They're about the size of a small dog and are covered with short, soft, black fur with white markings on some parts of their bodies. An adult male can weigh from 5 to 13 kilograms and a female from 4.5 to 9 kilograms.
They've got a large head and neck with heavy limbs. They're called devils because of the terrible sounds they make at night. This has given them an undeserved reputation for being aggressive, whereas in fact they're fairly shy creatures. But this doesn't mean that they're tame or friendly enough to be pets.
And like kangaroos, they carry their young in a pouch. They have babies only once a year, and then about 20 are born at one time, but at that stage they're only as big as a grain of rice. The babies have a race to the pouch because there are only 4 teats there, and the mothers rear an average of 3 young annually.
The babies stay in the pouch for about 5 months. Then they're left in their nest or are carried on their mother's back when she goes out, and eventually they have to look after themselves at about 8 months. Then they in turn start breeding at the end of their second year.
And around 60% of them die in their first summer due to the tough competition for food. The ones that survive can live for up to 7 years, which means they don't live as long as the average domestic dog.
No. And it's estimated that now there are between 100,000 and 150,000 of them altogether. They were almost wiped out by the early European settlers because they hated the devils eating their chickens, so the government paid people to kill Tasmanian devils.
And most farmers still dislike them. Their numbers fell so drastically due to farmers poisoning them or shooting them that it was thought that they might have become extinct. Then a law was passed in 1941 to protect them, and since then their numbers have grown again.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Now we'd like to talk about some of their habits. They live alone in places such as hollow logs, caves, or in burrows underground, which they line with bark, grass and leaves. They usually move slowly and look clumsy when they move quickly, but the young ones are more agile and can even climb trees.
But one of the most amazing things about Tasmanian devils is how and what they eat. They've got incredibly strong teeth and jaws, so a large male can give you a bite as strong as a 50-kilogram dog.
But don't worry, they don't eat people. Some farmers complain about them taking young lambs, but their diet consists predominantly of animals that have already died. They don't get ill when they eat sick animals because of the digestive enzymes in their own stomachs that kill the diseases.
And they've got an undeserved reputation for being smelly, whereas in fact they wash themselves as much as cats do. They're nocturnal animals, so they go hunting at night, often travelling up to 15 kilometres and using their strong sense of smell to find food. They eat all kinds of animals, and they eat everything, including fur, and leave nothing behind except the largest bones.
Yeah, there can be up to 22 of them feeding off one carcass at the same time, and they're very greedy, noisy eaters. In all the excitement of eating, there's a lot of coughing, barking and so on. It's quite common for them to bite each other to decide who can eat first, who goes second and so on.
And they've got an incredible appetite. They can eat the equivalent of 40% of their own body weight in just half an hour, which is like a human eating about 25 kilograms of steak. And they make really good use of their strong, blunt teeth. When they're frightened, they show them by yawning, which is more effective than biting or barking.
But the only serious fighting that takes place is when they're looking for a mate. All in all, they're a fascinating little animal.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear a lecture by a healthcare researcher to students of health science about the results of a survey on yoga in Australia. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon, everyone.
In today's lecture, I'm going to present some of the findings of the largest and most comprehensive survey of yoga practice ever conducted in Australia. The objectives of this survey were to investigate the characteristics of people who practice yoga in this country, the styles and techniques of yoga that are practiced, how often people practice yoga, the reasons why they do yoga, and the perceived benefits of yoga practice. It is our hope that the findings of this survey will be of help to both teachers and students of yoga in this country and abroad, as well as to healthcare practitioners. Prior to our study, no nationwide research had been conducted into the topic. Our research team decided to do a web-based survey so that we would reach the maximum possible number of people all around the country, and also due to our funding limitations. The survey was promoted through yoga schools, the media, and by word of mouth. Eventually, almost 4,000 people responded to the survey, which took about 30 minutes to complete. About 1/3 of the people who filled in the survey were yoga teachers. The other 2/3 were yoga students. Overall, 85% of the respondents were women. Yoga means different things to different people, and reflecting its diversity, there are many types of yoga. Our survey found that it is males and younger people who are more attracted to some of the physically more demanding styles of yoga that have gained in popularity in the West over the past 2 decades, whereas older age groups went for more relaxing styles. Apart from providing exercise, yoga can also be a form of therapy, meditation, or a spiritual path. Government agencies have found that around 2% of the adult population practice yoga to a greater or lesser extent, with a much lower participation rate for people who have not yet turned 18. Both their research and our survey found that the age group with the highest participation rate in yoga classes is the 35 to 44-year-old group. There has been a slight decline recently in the popularity of yoga. However, this was in the context of a reduction in physical activities overall among the Australian population. A major reason for this trend is not the rise in the popularity of junk food, but because more and more people are playing computer games. 56% of the yoga students who responded to our survey attend class once or twice a week. In contrast, and not surprisingly, the same percentage of the yoga teachers in our survey said they taught or practiced yoga between 5 and 7 times per week. Most people initially take up yoga to improve their health and fitness, with an emphasis on flexibility and strength, but also in order to reduce stress or as a treatment for a physical problem, particularly for a bad back. Many of the respondents to our survey stated that their reasons for doing yoga changed after they started doing regular practice, with more than half claiming that they keep at it for their personal development, which could be interpreted in a variety of ways. Although overall yoga promotes physical and mental health, it can cause damage if not done properly, and care needs to be taken with inverted postures such as the headstand and shoulder stand, as well as with the lotus position, which is the cross-legged position that is commonly associated with yoga and meditation. A common admission in the survey among those who had sustained injuries was that they had pushed themselves too hard. Far less frequently, teachers were said to have caused injuries by pushing students too hard. A large number of our survey respondents reported that they work in healthcare occupations, and for most of the yoga teachers, teaching yoga is not their only source of income.
Among the students, the most common healthcare occupation is nursing, whereas among teachers, the largest group worked as massage therapists. Many also worked as nurses, psychologists, and practitioners of alternative medicine. In the survey, we also looked at incomes. We didn't ask for individual incomes, but household incomes. That is, the total income of all the people that survey respondents lived with. We found that around 3/4 of the students and 60% of the teachers have a household income above $50,000 per year, whereas just 9% of the students are on an annual household income below $30,000. 1 in 5 of the teachers belong to this group. It would seem that being a yoga teacher is not a path to riches. Yoga itself isn't that expensive, with the average person spending just under $100 a month on yoga practice and accessories. Overall, yoga was found to have a positive impact on people's lives, with a clear majority concluding that their physical, mental and emotional health, as well as their relationships, were better or much better than before they started doing yoga.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
So guys, don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test and speaking, you got guesswork. Please guys, participate in everyday new IELTS listening and reading practice tests to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. For more IELTS material, visit my official website www.ieltsupdatesandrecentexams.com. The link is given below in the description. If you need PDF files of latest IELTS material, then please join my Telegram channel. So guys, please write your score below the comment section. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you all guys. Stay tuned, stay safe.